and welcome to this. Yes, we still actually have a show edition of the Purple Journal podcast. I am your host.
We exist.
Yay! Joe Johnson. We are back from the abyss of missing about a month or so. But
Joe who?
Joe Johnson.
It's been so long. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't even know who
I think that's just your age.
That could be.
Your memory fades, when you get up there.
Who is that? Joe?
We took a month off because Joe Oberle died of natural causes. No, I'm kidding.
And then came back to life. It's a medical miracle.
I'm feeling much better.
What is that from?
Not dead yet. That's Not Dead Yet sketch in the Holy Grail. Come on. I'm not dead.
Yeah.
Oh,
in the wheelbarrow.
Bring out your dead.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Anyway, so we were gone. I don't think we really, if we were going to take a couple weeks off, I think this is probably the best time because not a whole lot has happened outside of, obviously, the big inevitable story that a lot of us saw coming when we signed troubled receiver Michael Floyd was the Kambucha-Gate that happened when he failed about a handful of well, how did it work? It was his alcohol monitor went off, but I also read that he convinced the judge to remove the alcohol monitor and that they were going to just do random urine tests because he was afraid that if he fell on the monitor it might break his ankle, but his monitors, did they move it to his wrist or something?
I hadn't heard any of that. I heard they were breathalyzers that he had to submit.
Okay, I've heard multiple things. I heard that there were 5 hits on his monitor overnight from Sunday to Monday. But then I heard also that it was a breathalyzer and he refused one of the breathalyzers. So I was never really.
He slept through one of them.
Oh.
Okay. He wanted the monitor off his ankles just in case he fell into a swimming pool full of kombucha tea.
Which he clearly has actually enough of that to fill an actual swimming pool, and that's not hyperbole. That's how much it would take.
Earlier this evening, I was on the Purple FCW podcast with Andy Carlson, and he said that he did the math, and for a guy the size of Michael Floyd to register the numbers that he did, he would have had to have a drink 4 gallons of kombucha tea an hour for 6 hours before you went to bed.
Maybe it was craft kombucha tea, which is always more potent alcohol-wise. Certainly, the craft beer is more potent.
It's like a human cannot consume 4 gallons of liquid, and you would die of your electrolytes would separate, and you would die like that lady did from that radio contest, drinking a gallon of water or whatever.
Well, she didn't pee. Oh, whatever.
Yeah, but I if he was sleeping through things, unless he was rocking a catheter, which he has the money to do.
Well, he's under house arrest at Kyle Rudolph's house.
That's the variable to me that doesn't make. I mean, it makes sense and it doesn't. It's how did he get? It's not like he was drunk. I mean, it was half the legal limit to drive, but did he just go to the liquor store and drink in his room at Kyle Rudolph's house? I thought Rudolph was supposed to be his.
I mean, he went to bed at 3 a.m. I would imagine it's not that hard to get something by him if he's, and his wife, girlfriend, fiance, or, fast asleep.
Yeah. I wrote an article about this because I have a different perspective on it because I am also an alcoholic. And before this happened, I basically said that something bad's going to happen because he is not ready to face his demons, and it's hard enough to get sober when you realize it and you're trying to tackle it, but when you're making excuses and blaming other people and just you're in denial, basically, you're going to continue to drink. I mean, he was obviously drinking in New England. He ended that interview early when the guy asked if he had a drink since he got there. I think that, and I talked about this on the Andy Carlson show, but I think if it was suggested to him to drink kombucha tea and he understood that there was a little bit of alcohol in there, my thinking is that he said that's a perfect excuse for me to just have a half pint of liquor. If I test positive, I can say it's the tea. Because that's how an addict's mind works,
That's a good way to think about it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
That's what I would do. I mean, to be honest. I mean, that's...
You are a sober alcoholic, correct?
But I still have the machinations, I understand.
I just wanted to get that on the air.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, I'm drunk right now, but that's just like a speed. I'm kidding.
For me, this is the first shoe dropping, and the other one, I don't know when it will happen, but it will drop.
Yeah.
I don't think he makes it on the field.
No, that's a good point. Maybe not.
You know.
Why then go through all this support and supporting this pretty much
because the team is liable. They're liable if they contributed to his relapse and they contributed to his violation of his house arrest. Like the team could get in. Like I could imagine the team getting in trouble for like knowingly suggesting kombucha tea to a recovering alcoholic.
Yes, and he's not even a recovering alcoholic; he's a complete alcoholic. And
yeah, it's true. He hasn't even admitted it, which is disgusting. The team hasn't admitted it. Nobody's owned up to it. It's a really gross situation.
It really is, man, because it's like he doesn't need any other excuses. But when you have a team in a league as powerful as the NFL telling you we're gonna write this letter so you can get off of your jail time, regardless of what their motivations were, in his mind, they're enabling him basically, and they were.
Yeah, absolutely.
They should have never, in a million years, even suggested kombucha to him. I mean, they shouldn't even let him use mouthwash. I mean, when I was in treatment, they rip your bag apart when you get there, your suitcase, and anything that you have, whether it's aspirin or an inhaler or freaking hand sanitizer, cologne, they take it all away from you because they know that somebody is going to drink it or try to.
Joe, did they say that they suggested kombucha tea to him?
They said that they suggested it to all of their players, and they didn't make an exception to not suggest it to Floyd. Oh. They have it like on tap at the facility, and
So right. I don't know who specifically, like, you know, the letter was written by Spielman, right? But I doubt that Spielman and Zimmer were like specifically, hey, Floyd, you know.
It was written by lawyers, and then lawyers said, hey, you guys should make this statement, and then they were like, okay. These guys aren't thinking PR. They're thinking about a whole bunch of other crap. Lawyers did all this.
Yeah, so it's just, you know, it's just like Luke said, it's a gross situation. I mean, it's, and like Joe, like you said, there's going to be another shoe that drops, and, you know, I have been, despite the things that I've said about, you know, I don't think he's going to make it as a human being, not just a football player. I've been really excited about his potential on this team and what he would mean for this offense. And I said this again on Andy's show, but I said when he was found by the police sleeping in his SUV, he was probably 3 or 4 weeks away from a $50 million free agent contract. Then that happens, and he falls into the Vikings' lap at right about a veteran's minimum with probably a ton of different incentives. You know, it's not a lot of dead money if they cut him or whatever. But we're the Vikings, and we don't get gifts like that. That just doesn't happen. Like, my fear is that this is going to be like some gigantic distraction for the whole season. And at this point, I mean, yeah, it would be great to have him if he was playing at his full potential, but I don't think he's in that that place in his mind. So it just sucks.
It could be a problem. It could be a problem, like you said. You know, like look at the current situation in Washington or what was there many years ago. It's not the crime, it's the cover-up. And if the Vikings are complicit in the cover-up, it's like, you know, that's not good. I'm not saying
that could become a much worse situation than it. Yeah. Like, if it were just, we took a flyer on a risky guy and then he, you know, turned out to not work out, and then that, you know, that's why we didn't guarantee him any money in the contract, and then, like, that would be that, you know, it would kind of be a sucky situation, but it's not something that really reflects that poorly on the team, in my opinion. Like, if he went out and signed Josh Gordon and then he smoked weed again, it's like, yeah, we know we took a risk and we didn't guarantee him any money, and that's that, and you move on. But now that they've, like, gotten themselves all wrapped up in this whole thing, and they've corroborated his story, and they've been like, yeah, no, we didn't tell him there was alcohol in kombucha tea. Like, it's such a terrible look, and now they're all wrapped up in this whole thing for a guy that, like, kind of wasn't even, like, guaranteed to make the team.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, they doubled down.
My initial reaction, and this is completely obvious for the followers of our site, was that he was done. I thought they were going to cut him, like, for sure. Like,
me too.
My first post was, let's go after Decker, because Floyd is done. And that
Same.
Was
I was tweeting Decker crap from the purple PTSD that whole time.
It was a failed experiment, and Decker's available, thank God. It's going to cost us more money, and how does that work with Thielen and Diggs? Where does he fit? Because Floyd, traditionally he's been a number 2 receiver, so he could fit in as the third guy, but Decker is, he's been a number 2 guy too, but it was just interesting to see how theoretically he'd fit in the offense as opposed to Floyd. And then, everything changed when it was like, the team is backing him, and now he's going to go to jail for 1 day, and maybe his suspension will go from 2 games to 4 or 4 to 8.
He could get 10.
It seems to me, how many times has Gordon screwed up? It's like Gordon gets 2 years suspension. So he screwed up that many more times than Floyd has?
He screwed up 6 times, yeah. He's had a lot.
Okay, because I'm like, you ever thought that Floyd was on the substance abuse list after his first DWI? So the second one you think would be more than the 2 games that a lot of people were saying, but...
Well, the 2 games, the way it works, according to the Bleacher Report article or whatever that reported this rumor, is the 2 games is what he would get for the actual extreme DUI, and he hadn't had a problem since college, and I think he was out of the you're still on probation period for the college problems he had. So I think he was out of that statute of limitations or whatever. Got the DUI, the Arizona DUI, and that would have been 2 games, and then for this violation, because it's a violation of your sentence and a violation of your treatment policy, that could be 8 games. So the 2 plus the 8, and that's how you would get to 10. And if that happens, I don't have a lot of faith in him going 4 or 5 months without football and not screwing up again.
Yeah, and then they probably just let him go once they hear that.
And why would you hang on to him? If you're going to put a guy on the roster for 10 weeks, that's a guy who's, learning the quarterback, who's learning the offense, who's getting chemistry with everybody else, and getting chemistry with the tight ends, and getting chemistry on run plays, and learning all the playbook. And then you're just going to, knock him out for a guy who's never been on the team, who screwed up a whole bunch of times, who, was on the roster bubble anyways, just because he was playing a first-round pick 2 years ago? I would not want to do that if I were the Vikings.
That was my point. You don't put him on. You don't roster a player that is, at best, he's only going to get you eight games and hasn't even been on your team yet, and he's learning the offense or whatever. It doesn't have any chemistry with the players, and he comes back for 8 games. You don't even, like you said, don't even know if he's going to survive, not screwing up.
I think the only way that he makes the team is if there's an injury.
But are we missing something here? I mean, look at even you go down to Arizona where he was given 1 day in jail and able to finish out his sentence. That's kind of don't you think? I mean, if you put that plus the Vikings' response together, are we missing something? I'm just being a devil's advocate, because all of a sudden that all just seems well, we all want to make this work for this guy, because I figure, he does something like he did, and he goes to jail for just 1 day. I figured, boy, it would be more severe penalty.
As far as I know, and this is from personal experience, I did the exact same thing that he did. I fell asleep behind the wheel of my Lincoln, and I woke up to a police officer asking me if I had diabetes, and I said, I'm supposed to, but I don't, and that probably is what saved me, because an ambulance came and took my blood sugar, and it was a 20, which is horrible. It's near coma level, and I blew a 2.28, 0.29, and they took me to the hospital. And the police officer went and picked my mom up, drove her to my car, let her take the bottle of vodka that was on my lap home with her, didn't tow my car or anything. They took me to the hospital until I dried out 3 hours later, because they gave me a bag of sugar, and I went home. And the whole time I looked up the law, and I thought for sure I was going to get a summons in the mail saying you got a DUI. And I was in a panic about it. This was in 2008, 2009. The law in Minnesota, at least, is if you blow above a .20, which he did, you, regardless of statute, who you are or how much money you have to stay in jail until your court date, and it's usually a week or 2. It's not you see the judge the next morning on television. So the fact that he got an extreme DUI and was let out of let out until his court date, and then he had to go for 1 day in jail, to me, either means that Arizona has lighter laws than Minnesota does, which could be true because Minnesota has a really big problem with DUIs per capita anyway, or that I think it's a combination of lighter laws and the fact that he's who he is, to be honest, because the fact that he didn't stay in jail for at least a week or two before his sentencing, to me, says that Arizona doesn't really care as much about DUIs as Minnesota does. So he's lucky. I mean, if he gets busted up here, he's in deep trouble, especially if he's in – because Ramsey County is not messing around. I mean, I had 2 minor consumptions in Hennepin County when I was in college, and it was a ticket you paid through the mail. And then I got one in Ramsey County, and you had to go to court and go on probation and everything, regardless of previous troubles. So the fact that, like Luke said, if he's not going to be playing football for multiple months and he ends up, palling around with his friends from high school, there's no way he's not going to screw up. I mean, it's a foregone conclusion. Unless he has like a come to God moment. He needs to have that eureka moment that all addicts have where it's like, oh my God, what am I doing? And that was the thing that people,
rock bottom, yeah.
Yeah, people, yeah, totally, a rock bottom. He's living a rock bottom right now, but he doesn't realize it, and that's the problem. So,
and he's not getting, I mean, you got a day in jail and then, like, you can still play football. Like, that isn't a rock bottom. They're letting him not have his rock bottom yet, and he still needs to go lower.
That's true, because he's being enabled, and that sucks, like, big time. I mean, that's just, like you said, it's gross. To me, it's so hard for me to, I don't want to pass judgment because I'm not that type of addict. I'm not a 12-stepper that finds Jesus and then tells the family they're not living the right way after screwing up for a decade. But it's not going to work. It just isn't. There's no way that this is going to work. So at this point, you might as well just scratch him off the roster for the season. I was thinking that anyway before we all talked about it, but this is like a complete validation of that, I think.
I think if you take him at his word, which you shouldn't take him at his word for this kombucha thing, because I did a piece for Viking Territory, doing the math on this, and it would have been like 10 gallons, and like Andy said, it's like gallons. It's impossible for him to have drank a legally okay version of kombucha tea that isn't just a beer and get that drunk. But if you do take him at his word, hypothetically, then the 1 day in jail makes a little bit more sense, because if you take him, oh, I just had this drink and I didn't know that it had alcohol in it, but I wasn't purposefully breaking and if you believe him, then a day in jail kind of makes sense. Be like, hey, don't do that again, but we understand that, you didn't know. You shouldn't do that, but that is what it is reading to me. It reads like the team and the judge in Arizona and, depending on the suspension he gets, possibly the NFL are all taking him at his word that it was just this kombucha tea drink and we didn't know. And that's kind of what makes it gross.
Well, yeah, I mean, I understand the sentencing, I guess. I was hoping he would get treatment, but it's on par with, I guess, what other people are getting in Arizona. But I guess it comes on whether or not the team actually does believe him. I know, Spielman had all this great stuff to say, the day before all this happened, where Floyd was, a surprise, and he was, really playing great in the
I don't
OTAs
believe that.
And everything.
He wasn't even getting first-team reps. I don't believe it at all.
So, I mean, do you think the team is more just trying to cover their ass?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't. Here's the deal. I don't think Zimmer or Spielman has anything to do with the statements that are being put out in their name. I think lawyers are doing it and then saying, sign this and say you said it. This is what you should say.
Okay.
Because I don't think at this point, when it becomes a problem of addiction and it becomes a problem of alcoholism, I don't think on-field performance really has any bearing anymore. Yeah. It's at this point you just enabled an alcoholic and you messed up a person that you're now really responsible for because you messed up and are part of this. So now they're going to be very, very careful about what they say, and you'll get these statements that are quote unquote from Spielman that are pre-prepared and things that aren't his thoughts.
So do you think that might help his chances to actually make the team, since they feel like
Maybe?
they have to?
Maybe. It depends on what the NFL does.
Such a weird situation.
It depends on what the NFL does. And we've seen examples of the NFL taking, guys who maybe got in legal trouble but were ultimately acquitted but still got a huge suspension because the NFL decided they could also punish him.
Yes.
And we've seen that. I think Greg Hardy, that happened to him before the actual thing, before he actually got in trouble. He had one where he was accused of getting in trouble and then it found innocent, but the NFL still punished him. It was somebody, and I could see them pulling that with Floyd. Well, the judge didn't think you messed up, but we think you messed up, and here's 10 games, and then how do you keep him on your roster after that?
Yeah, that sucks. It just really does. I mean, I think we're going to be fine regardless, but...
Yeah, I don't think it really is relevant anymore whether or not we needed him in the wide receiver core, which I don't really, like, we didn't really move. We have 2 top 30 wide receivers and a rookie who we don't know what to or a second-year player who we don't know what to expect from. Like, the other teams are worse off, but whatever.
Yeah. Dorial Green-Beckham.
Jesus.
I love that silence. That completely says it all.
Had him on my fantasy team. Don't go anymore.
He was my Mobo of 2015. I thought, on paper, what a beast, 6'5". He's not the fastest guy. I mean, I think he runs like a 4.4.
Let's go get another failing former highly touted receiver with off-field issues. What could go wrong?
God.
Your mobile, not like your Moby Dick, your white whale, Joe.
it really is. That's
your Mobo Dick, if you will.
I love it. Yeah. So anyway, beyond that, I mean, there's a lot to be excited about with the team. And
sneaky winner of this whole kombucha situation is Mobo.
Yeah.
Because if there's still a 6th wide receiver spot, which is a big if, we know there could definitely only be 5 again. And you have, Diggs, Thielen, Treadwell, Wright, and Adams, and those are your 5. And if there's potentially a 6th, that just opened up, and now Mobo, I mean, he still has to beat Stacey Coley and Isaac Frichte, and that's, he's definitely not winning in those battles, I don't think, but...
I think, I have a big theory about him beating out Coley, just because Coley, to me, is like a less talented Green Beckham. I mean, I just don't have any patience for guys who don't have that. And maybe it's not his fault because it's not ingrained in him, but the guys that don't have the work ethic, like they say he doesn't, he just doesn't have the love of the game like a lot of people do. I think if it comes down to looking at like somebody who's talented but isn't trying as hard as somebody like Mobo who was walking to practice and is struggling to learn perfect English while learning the playbook and has been every single day trying to get better to make this team, I think that means something.
Well, that's what they always say, or at least I should say. I heard Lou Nanny say, you hear coaches complain about guys with bad attitudes that have plenty of talent and have bad attitudes. He goes, that's what I hired you for, to coach those guys. He goes, the guys that want to play are easy to coach. The guys that are hard to coach are the ones with talent and a bad attitude. So, you got to think about that too. I think the other sneaky winner in all this, Luke, is kombucha tea. I'd never heard of it.
It's true. Yeah, everybody in the NFL knows about kombucha now.
I tried it. It's not great.
It's like a probiotic thing? Is that the deal?
Yeah, it's like supposed to be. It's marketed kind of like kale, where it's supposed to be like just so good for you. And yeah, it's like a probiotic, and it's got like certain bacteria in it that are supposed to be good for you. Apparently, one of the things about it, like being alcoholic, is if you leave it out overnight, it could like ferment more. And I think Arifa-san tried that.
He did.
I saw on Twitter he like left it out overnight, and he was like, "This is vinegar. This is undrinkable garbage." Like.
Yeah, I think the joke is he's gonna leave this out so I can get wasted tomorrow was like the
joke.
Because I actually laughed at that because I thought it was hilarious. But yeah, good for them. Marketing, social media, knocking it out of the park. Speaking of which, training camp's coming up, and it could be the last training camp. I don't know if it is for sure. Down at Mankato, and I'm a Minneapolis guy, and I live by the airport. Over by Lake Nokomis, and apparently the Vikings are building this like utopia on another planet called Vikings Lake, where like new players can live there, and it's self-sustaining, and it's the birth of Skynet from Terminator. But as somebody who would be really close to that, and who might eventually be able to go over there with like a press pass or whatever, I still like really the idea of having training camp in Mankato. Like, I love the experience of once a year or whatever, how many times I go down there. I've gone to every training camp that I can remember, except for the year after we traded Randy Moss as a protest, and I think they noticed. But I just like going to Mankato, and I like how the town welcomes everybody, and I'm sure it's a huge economic boom for the town, but I kind of am on the side of I wish they'd keep it down there, and I know Joe is actually one of the most famous people ever born in Mankato. It's him, and then behind a chicken that could
That's probably true.
Winners.
You're lucky you said that, Joe, because I was going to make sure that the Mankato Area Chamber of Commerce was going to bar you at the door, that you couldn't come in if you were going to promote the whatever the estates in Egan. But
yeah, no, I'm not for it, man. And I know like you're a big Mankato guy, so I wanted to get your opinion on that. And
it's a tough deal. I having that's my hometown, and growing up going to training camps all my life as a kid, and it's a huge deal for the city. They throw out the red carpet, and they get people from all over southern Minnesota, Iowa, where have you, people driving all over, staying in their hotels. It is a financial boon to the city, and it's also it's a thing that puts them on the map. All of a sudden you go see on ESPN. Now we're down in Mankato. I mean, no one would have ever heard of the town if they didn't have Vikings training camp there. So it's been like 52 or 3 years, and the Vikings actually have they're under contract for one more year after this one, but that's easily paid for or bought out or whatever, and they'll this place you're building in Egan is scheduled to be done by then. So this is the last one, and I'm sure that's how Mankato will treat it. I'm going to as well. I go down there every year, see my mom still is down there, my brother and his family, and I got a lot of relatives, and I go to, it's kind of fun to walk the sidelines there and have someone yell out your name, but it's for me, it's a lot of years of a lot of memories of going up there as a kid and sitting outside and watching the practices and chasing autographs.
It's been amazing too how I remember I have some pictures on the purpleJOURNAL Facebook page of Culpepper, Carter, and Moss taking a knee together, and I was sitting where the fence is with this long lens taking pictures, and there was maybe one of those tents that they put up for the sun, and maybe 30 people there, and you'd be lucky if they remembered to plug in the pop machine or unlock the bathroom underneath those bleachers. There was nothing there even when that was in the early 2000s, and now it's like an event. There's games you can play, and
right when I was
you can buy stuff.
It was a snow fence. You'd ride up and lean against the snow fence, and which was 5-6 yards off the sidelines, and see them catching passes right in front of you, and now it's the chain link fence that you couldn't get past, and you rode your bike up there up that Stadium Hill, and which was not easily done, and
oh God, I can't imagine.
And you got to back then the players would then, as they left practice, they would walk through the fans to go to the locker room. And you could just sit there and hobnob with them and chat with them, try to get an autograph as they milled through in this throng of people. And now it's all segmented. They have certain days they sign autographs, and they got everybody fenced away to give these people their privacy. And I understand all that. And and the little fun park, just off the way where you can buy beer and play games and stuff. It's so much different than it was. But it's.
My fear too is that I know that Vikings Lake is going to hold 6,000 people in the bleachers, but last season I went down a couple times, and then I went down for the Saturday night game, and I've always gone maybe an hour, so I'd show up an hour before, and we got there about an hour and a half before, and you could not even see the field. There was nowhere to stand where you could actually see what was going. We actually left because there was the bleachers were full, and then it was probably 30 people deep on the hill, and even by the porta potties and everything. And my fear is if they move it up to Egan, which they're going to do, but that it's so much easier for people to just stop over there on a whim as opposed to Mankato being kind of a day on your schedule, that it's going to make it really hard to, like you said, experience those things that even I got to experience. The guys would ride, they still do this, but ride their bikes, but you could ask them for an autograph, and sometimes they would do it. I feel like it's just going to get out of control.
Yeah, it could be. You're going to. Yeah, I don't know. It could go either way. It's going to be a great place for them to be as far as the team. And they'll have hotels there for hopefully they're thinking that rookies will stay there, and they can keep them under the watchful eye. People, fans can come there and stay. I don't know. I still think you'll see people driving from a long ways away to get there. But once they see how maybe it changes a little bit from a rube like Mankato, that not to say that they're rubes, but it's a small town Mankato deal where it's just a little bit more comfortable, maybe not. Yeah, less corporate, and maybe they won't come after a while of seeing that. Who knows? But it'll be interesting to see which way it does go.
Yeah, and camp is coming up. And I know you guys have both written about a few things in regards to camp. Luke has been doing a weekly series that's been awesome in regards to some of the camp battles. Every week it's a different position. So at this point, you've covered, I think, most
like
of
7 position groups.
And so we're getting there. But I guess we should start out by just kind of talking about the most interesting to me. And we kind of touched on this already with Michael Floyd, but when it comes to wide receiver, what do you kind of foresee there in regards to camp battles?
The wide receiver group is one of the more dynamic ones because, like you have Diggs and Thielen cemented at the top, and they don't really have much to gain or lose in the preseason other than maybe at some point they're competing with each other with targets, but it's all moot because they'll both be very important parts of the offense. And then you kind of had a battle between Treadwell and Floyd, but with all this kombucha stuff and the fact that Floyd was kind of losing that battle pretty handily, that seems to be shaking itself out. And obviously there's a lot of training camp to go. If Floyd were to return and maybe play better or whatever, it seems unlikely, but it could still happen. So you kind of got that wide receiver 3 battle going, and then below those two, there's this really interesting dynamic of you have Jarius Wright, and his role on the team is kind of he suddenly has both Adams and Coley gunning for his job for that role player slot guy.
Yeah.
And then below that, if Jarius Wright stays on the team, but he's kind of everybody's fun, sexy, dark horse cut pick that if you want to have a hot take, you say Jarius Wright doesn't make the team. He can kind of be the Fred Evans, oh my God, I never thought Jarius Wright would be cut. And I don't think that's a knock on his play at all. I just think, his role there's no space for him if we can get the exact same thing from a cheap rookie. And he can go, make his way on another team, probably be better for him too.
I don't want to keep bringing up the Purple FTW podcast thing, but Andy had a point that I hadn't heard before.
Andy hates Jarius so much,
he does.
And I love it.
Yeah, man, he really does. And his point was that Jarius Wright isn't necessarily a slot receiver. He doesn't have the skills of a skilled slot receiver. He just plays slot receiver because he's short.
You can't win as an outside receiver if you're short, so yeah.
Yeah, so, I guess his point is we can't just look at him as the slot guy because he's a default slot guy. So if you look at a guy, I guess I've read things about Rodney Adams where he would be an upgrade at the position because of his height and his playmaking ability, but is he really even a slot guy either? In college, wasn't he more of wasn't he like an X receiver most of the time?
I think, most people projected him to be more of a slot receiver because of just, his traits. But I think whatever it is, if it's slot or if it's slot, but you also can bounce outside, that role, they're competing for the same role, however you want to define that role to be. And Jarius Wright, has some guys to fend off, and maybe he could fend them off. Maybe he can still play well, and he still ends up being a guy that's active on Sundays. But if he gets cut, then you suddenly have, behind Diggs, Thielen, and Treadwell, and then you kind of have 2 or 3 spots that are really wide open between Coley and Adams, and Isaac Fructis is trying to make the roster, and he's tried to make the roster a bunch of times, but maybe can't. And with the position battle series that I write, it's a little different than what you're doing, Joe, or what Yinka's doing over at Daily Norseman. Mine is more about their story, and it's a little bit more about the fluff and the background, So it's stuff. There's a good article if you want to, since we were talking about Stacey Coley and his work ethic. There's a really good article that I linked to in that piece about kind of where that came from and where that rumor came from, and it was about the heart-to-heart he had with his high school principal in his sophomore year when he didn't care about football, and they saw all this talent, and they were like, no, you need to, buckle down and, care. And he was like, and I was a changed man after that. And it's a really, really good piece that, explains the whole thing. And you can kind of make what you will out of that, and will it stick in the NFL or not, and that could always be debated. But if you're going to read the position battle articles, don't think that you're going to come away with, an opinion of who's going to win them. what I want you to do to know from that is to know more about these people, like where they're coming from and what kind of player they are, and what obstacles they've overcome. There was a really great story about Elijah Lee, the 7th round draft pick, in the linebackers piece. He raised by a single mother. His mom, wanted him to play football. He had an interview with Kent State, or with K-State where he went, and he wanted to skip that college interview, that scholarship interview, to go to a Drake concert, and his mom was like, no, you're going to this interview. Turns out he goes there, plays in college, and now he's drafted by an NFL team. So that worked out, and he didn't get to go to the Drake concert. But that's the kind of thing that I think you should be looking for. It's a lot more of, let's get to know these people and who they are, and then, every time you see someone get cut and you know their story and what led to that, there's a lot more weight. And that, to me, that makes preseason football must-watch TV.
Totally.
Because it's everybody's Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's what I love about people tend to leave when it's the second half of the first game or whatever, but I think, and Joe's talked about this a lot on our shows, and then just in general, that these are human beings and like to talk about their lives like so flippantly that these do it's like a make or break people's dreams. So it's kind of heartbreaking, to be honest.
It is true. And speaking of Jarius Wright, just to link it all together, I mean, back to Mankato, I was going to say there's a lot of history in the Mankato training camp, and I was standing, 10 feet away when Greg Childs blew out his knees sidelines. Standing right there, and you walk over and say, oh my God, this is not bad, or not good. And he came in with Jarius Wright, both on the same college team together, and came in as rookies. And you saw one where Jarius Wright made the team and has built it's about 5-year career now, 6 years maybe. And
veteran of the squad.
And Greg Childs' career ended, and it was so sad because at the time I thought in the rookie camp before that, I should say OTAs, I thought Greg Childs was killing Jarius Wright. I thought he looked so much better, and so I had a bet with some other writer. I said who was going to make the team, and then Childs goes down, it's over. But so there's a story that those two guys were buddies from college and came to the same pro team. And it's right. It's a neat series that Luke is doing to delve behind and get that stuff out there.
There's another fun one that you should look at, that if you're interested in learning about kind of background stuff, look at Freddie Tagaloa's story, the rookie tryout guy we took from Arizona. He's been through some really interesting stuff to get here, and there was a lot of stuff working against him in college that doesn't seem to be working against him anymore.
What position does he play?
He'll be a tackle.
Okay.
And he's if I were to have a hot take of who's gonna sneak onto the roster that we would have never thought, it'd be him.
Okay. And you wrote about the quarterback position too.
Yeah, that one. I think the only ones I haven't done are cornerback. I haven't done edge rushers and tight ends, and then I'll do one on like the specialists, and then I'll have my final roster prediction and stuff, and then talk about the punter battle and stuff.
It's so funny that Joe starts out with receivers. What a shock!
I know.
That also is the one that came out yesterday.
I'm gonna zone out for the rest of this, but what did you think about the quarterback position? Obviously, it's kind of set in regards to who the starter is going to be.
Yeah, well, you have
and forever, as far as I'm concerned. But
yeah, and you have Teddy Bridgewater is he's in the article and his situation is described, but it's more of like, you all know, here, read about it if you don't know, because I'm not going to like bother typing up this crap we already know about Teddy. And then you have Case Keenum and Taylor Heineke. And what I think is interesting about those two guys is if whichever one gets cut, and we could end up in a situation where they both make the roster and Teddy's on IR all year. But if Teddy ever comes back on the roster and one of them gets bounced, I don't see how that guy finds another like significant chance to like ever be a starting quarterback again. Because with Keenum, he had his shot in Los Angeles, and they shut him down. And I don't see a team being like, oh, yeah, this guy that got beat out by a rookie who wasn't ready, and then also got beat out by Taylor Heineke. Yeah, he's a guy we want to, like, have be like that. That's a real bad pedigree to go, like, try to sell to a team. And with Taylor Heineke, he just doesn't ever – he's never had he had one good preseason, and 2 years removed from that, that's if he ends up off the roster, I don't see another team really having any reason to go for him over, somebody else who's in free agency and
that's
these
a good
other
point,
guys.
Luke. That's a good point. Although, then the other side of the coin for me is that in the back of my head is Sean Hill, who's just made a career out of being a backup. And I don't know that he ever really earned his. He had a number of starts through his career, but he never really, beat anybody out for that position. I think it's more just coming in after someone got injured. So it seems like there's always, if you're willing to take a lesser contract and know your role and know what you're there for, maybe there is room for a Case Keenum, but it'll never.
Do you think Keenum came here not expecting to have to compete like he is with Heineke?
I would think so.
No, I would think he knew what he was getting into. What do you mean?
Yeah.
No, I figured, and maybe this is just my bias because this is what I thought, but I figured when he signed up, he thought, Teddy's going to be out for the year, I'll be the backup. I don't think he thought that he's going to have to fight for his career with a guy he's probably never even heard of.
I don't think it's a fight. I think it's a downhill battle for Keenum. I think he's at a pretty significant advantage in just that he's better than we give him credit for. When we envision him as a starter, he was a god-awful starter. But when you envision him as a backup who might need to come in for a series if someone tweaks an ankle or whatever, he's one of the better iterations of that in the league. Okay. So I think he'll be fine. And, if you mentioned Sean Hill never lost to his, Joel Stabby.
Right.
So with Case Keenum, if he loses to his Taylor Heineke, that's kind of a death blow to his career. Though, if I had to put money on it, I don't think it's happening. If I had to put money on it, I would say it doesn't happen. But if it does, he stands to lose a lot, and it's a battle he should win. But if he doesn't, that really sucks for him.
Yeah, I think that stems from people overreacting to the fact that Heineke is on the team because he knows the playbook because he's been here, and granted it's a new playbook, but he has that advantage. And in OTAs, Keenum is coming in and learning a new playbook, so Heineke's probably going to look better than he does right now. And I think people have been using that to say it's Keenum and Heineke fighting for that spot. But I think the Vikings brought him in with every intention of having him be the backup.
The other thing to look at is the money. Who do they got to pay? And it factors in if it's a close thing and one of them's got guaranteed dollars, then that's the guy.
I don't think.
Case Keenum has got he's got a dead cap of $1 million if they cut him.
Oh wow.
Yeah. His cap hit is $2 million. So I'm thinking Heineke's is a lot lower than that. So.
Well, he's an undrafted. I think he's making nothing.
Yeah.
And the Vikings have no incentive to rush Teddy back. They can get a redshirt year from him. Why? I just don't see him. You know what I mean? I don't think he's going to come back at any point. That would just make everything. That would screw the contracts up. It was kind of the silver lining of the entire situation for the team. Anyway.
There is a little bit of dead cap on Taylor Heineke of a whopping total of $3,334.
So you think if I offer to pay Heineke's dead cap, I'll get a press pass?
I don't know if that's how that works, but
go over there with my debit card.
Taylor doesn't have. You got to pay one of the PR guys there. Pay their dead cap money.
One of the more interesting positions that you've talked about, it's a toss-up. I'm thinking about what people would be more interested in, but I think safety is probably the most interesting position. In the middle of our random ranting on the FTW show for the fifth plug for that, Andy asked me if someone put a gun to my head, which is a distinct possibility, what position would I, and I'll ask you guys this, see what your answer is actually this is a better way to do this. Right now, first round, 2018, assuming, there's no major injuries or whatever, what position do you think the Vikings draft in the first round next year? I want to see what your answers are versus mine.
Oh, I know mine. Go ahead, Joe.
I got to hear that question again because I can't believe we're focusing on the first round draft. When's the pick going to be, Joe?
Well, that's I know it's such a weird question, but it's such a good question because it'll answer which of the position groups we talk about next for Luke's thing.
Okay, so you're saying what position do they draft next year in
first round based on the
This
reality.
is a great July talker.
Yeah, based on the reality that we are in right now.
Let's see. There's quite a few factors. I think running back they should be set.
Yeah.
I think quarterback, they got way too many. I think wide receiver is a possibility because, if they lose Floyd, they may still want to find some. That'd just be another young guy. No, I'm not going to go there. Safety, cornerback, linebacker.
Give me a tackle.
Yeah, God, I suppose. Yeah, you're right.
Both your tackles, even if they turn out good, they're old. Or they're getting old. They'll be old. And you need a future at that position, and the 2018 draft is loaded with... No, offensive tackle.
Oh, okay.
The 2018 draft is loaded with offensive tackles. No, we got Jaleel Johnson. He's our future at 3-tech. Book it.
All right, well,
yeah,
so
Luke
you're
is
saying
right.
tackle?
Yep.
Both of you?
Oh, yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
All right, well, let's mess everything up.
What were you going to say?
I said safety.
I could see safety.
I thought about safety. I was thinking that between that and cornerback, but then even linebacker would have. Of course,
that was my second was linebacker, and then we got into a thing about Anthony Barr and the make or break year, whatever. But the reason I was wondering, so we have room for one more position, and I was thinking running back, which is obviously spicy for lots of reasons, or safety. But I think it's more important to talk about safety because I see a lot of comments on our Facebook page about people saying. When basically I posted an article saying that the Vikings were a team that national media says Dorial Green Beckham could end up on. Not that I wanted us to go after him, but there was nothing else to talk about. And everyone was like, why don't we go after a safety? Why didn't we draft a safety? We need a safety. So I figured that'd be the better talker. I just wanted to see where you guys...
We did draft a safety. His name is Jack Tocho, and he has a hilarious talk show.
Oh, yeah, Tonjo.
Yeah, and he has a talk show. He's funny.
They drafted one last year too. Not early.
Yeah.
So what
I don't think.
What are your
I don't think
what were your thoughts on the safety position that in your piece, Luke?
I think the way it shakes out right now, Sendejo's got that job until he doesn't, and he would have to have some age decline or something happen, or he would have to really beat Jaron Curse is a fine backup special teamer, but he's not going to beat out Sendejo as it stands right now. He would have to improve pretty drastically to do that. And all the guys, I think the more interesting and dynamic battle that we have right now is there's kind of 4 guys in 2 spots to go around between Anthony Harris, Anton Exum, Jaron Curse, and Jack Tocho. And I think you only keep half of those guys, and that battle is really fun.
Okay.
Yeah. Going back to the tackle, shouldn't we be able to get, a 1-year moratorium on not having to say we need to draft an offensive tackle in the first round, which I've been saying for the last 5. And maybe shouldn't the Vikings be able to buy 1 year with these tackles who have been super healthy their entire – can't believe I just said super healthy. Who have been healthy their entire
well, they've missed 3 games between the 2 of them over the last 4 years.
Exactly.
They've been very healthy.
Yeah, I think people, myself included, look at Boone as being because he left for multiple series, and I think he had a concussion. But I don't think he missed a lot of games. He just missed a few series, right?
He got dinged a little, yeah, but it wasn't an injury. Nothing to indicate that he's prone to future injury.
Have you guys seen anything to allude to Elfline moving to tackle? I know he wanted to prove to the team that he could play either, but is he pretty much set at center, or could
he'll be a center?
Center or guard. He's played
or guard, yeah.
Oh God, I was thinking. That's what I was thinking. Guard, not tackle. Duh. That's
he's working out at both. During OTAs, he worked out at both, and he was getting a lot of reps at a backup center. However, I think they're going to go Easton as their starter, Berger at right guard, and then that they'll probably make Ufline the backup at center.
Yeah, you got to. Elfline's got to beat out. If Elfline can't beat out Nick Easton, I don't want him on the field.
Yeah.
And that would really suck. Although, I mean, as a 3rd round pick, it's not like a 1st rounder that can't beat out, your undrafted whoever.
Do you agree with that assessment that it's a make or break year for Anthony Barr?
No, who said that?
It was.
It's some recency bias there.
That was a conclusion of Andy's when we talked about because I said safety and then maybe linebacker, and he said, "Oh, yeah, because it's Anthony Barr's make or break year with his 5th-year option, and the fact that he's got, obviously."
You're not drafting a linebacker to replace Barr. You're drafting a linebacker to replace. Right now we have Edmund Robinson replacing Chad Greenway. You got to draft someone to replace that.
That's what I was thinking. But
what he said right there. No. Barr had a down year, and Barr had some injuries that they didn't always give him credit for. I think there's some scuttlebutt behind the scenes, and what's his face called him out because he wanted to inspire him. And Barr is going to be a beast again. He's going to have a great year this year. It's not going to make or break. He will get re-signed. He's too much of a physical specimen. I mean, they picked him 9th overall in when they drafted him.
If he plays and he's just straight up garbage again, like if that happens where he's just absolutely unplayable trash, then I could see them declining the 5th-year option and like moving on. But that's so unbelievably unlikely.
Was he, Luke? Was that how you would say he played last year? Unbelievably trash.
He was really. They were toward the end of the year. They could just run right at Anthony Barr, and he was a liability to the team.
God damn, that's Andy
said that he did a bet before the draft or after the draft that Barr was going to have like a better career than Jadeveon Clowney, and he basically said that was true for a while, but now that Clowney is better than Barr.
I think over the course of their career, Barr has still had more success, and Clowney had a better 2016 than Barr had, but Barr's up 2-1.
Exactly. God dang. I just, the
recency bias is incredible.
When the guy's demonstrated some skills, you don't just, he has a down year, you don't just get rid of him because that doesn't mean he's done. I mean, how old is this guy, for crying out loud? Is it like 24, 5?
Who, Andy?
Yeah, Anthony Barr. No.
Oh.
I mean, I can't see it. I think he will bounce back, but it's not a make or break year. The Vikings are going to, maybe like Luke said, if he just falls on his face again, then there's something wrong. Maybe they can't fix it or whatever. But
if he can't play through injury, that's a legitimate problem, I suppose. But
is it? You can play football with a broken wrist.
I know, but at the same time, it's the NFL, so you have to do it. But if his wrist was, I didn't know his wrist was legit broken.
He still has a brace on it. I'm worried about that.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, there goes
Better
my
that.
enthusiasm for the season.
No, I think he'll be fine.
He'll be fine. He's got a lot of time to continue to recuperate and to continue to rest on it and stuff. I hope he doesn't get nerve damage in a surgery again. Let's have no more of that.
God. Yeah, so to kind of close out the show, Joe wrote an article this week. It's actually the number 1 article on the site right now. About by the big numbers, I think is the title, if I recall correctly.
Yes, I went with by the big numbers, so I could differentiate with the by the numbers that they're doing over on that other website.
Clickbait. Yeah, in that the one thing that stood out to me was actually I don't know which number you think is the most important. I was going to talk about the number of touchdowns that Bradford has thrown. I think the career best for him is 21, and he had 20 last season. I saw this thing. I don't remember what website I was on. That had it was PFF's adjusted completion percentage, and I guess his was number 1. It was 80%. Based on drops and balls that were swatted away, and then under pressure, he was the 2nd or 3rd best quarterback when it came to QB rating. So,
yeah, I just picked out some funky numbers, and that was one that struck out to me. I think he's got to improve there. I think we've got to see 25 to 30 touchdown passes from him this year for the Vikings offense, really to take a step forward, whether it's with his receivers or throwing to backs out of the backfield. I think he's got it. It's his team now. The big bad specter of Adrian Peterson is gone, and now he's the guy. He's the man, and he should take his ball control offense and get him down the field and get him in the end zone with his arm whenever possible.
That seems like a pretty attainable number, considering what a disaster last season was, and the fact that we're going to be able to dump the ball off to Cook and Murray, who Murray's
Give me some of those screen touchdowns that are technically passing touchdowns. Let's skew this stat.
That's what I think is going to end up getting him 30 or more, to be honest, if everyone stays healthy. I've really liked, too, and I kind of want your guys' opinion on some of the sauciness from Latavius Murray out in the media about how, it's his team and he wants to be the starter. I think that's,
I love that. Go get him.
The caveat he's put out there is, obviously I'm going to be a mentor to the young guy, but it's my team and that's why I came here. I think that's the right type of mentality to have. I know some people think that's, causing drama or whatever, but you don't want a skilled player who doesn't have that mentality. And I think that the fact that he does feel that way is a great sign for the offense and for
go get him.
Bradford.
That is.
If they're worried, go ahead.
I was going to say that's the attitude to have, but get your butt on the field first before you talk too much smack. Go ahead.
That's true. If someone is worried that Dalvin Cook is going to take offense to that, I want him to take offense to that and then go prove Latavius Murray wrong on the field. It's a competition. Let's go.
Yeah,
that's right.
And it's not necessarily a Favre, Aaron Rodgers thing where it's one or the other. They both are going to contribute, and if they're competing with one another, that's a net positive for the team because they can both show that on the field.
That's what Zimmer loves. He loves competition, so he says. So.
What other numbers did you have on there that you thought were?
Oh, let's see. I was going to see if trying to replace all of Peterson's. See if Cook had a chance at replacing all yards from scrimmage by Peterson his rookie year, which was I think 1609. And I thought he has a chance if Murray doesn't get on the field right away, and he has a chance just maybe rushing for 900 and some yards, and then with the yards he's going to get receiving out of the backfield, he might have a chance to. I thought more conservatively, a good number for him to shoot would be 1350. His rookie year, all-purpose, not all-purpose.
That'd be so good.
Yeah, it's a little
I'd
high.
be thrilled.
But it's tough with Murray there and Jerick McKinnon, who's going to want some reps as well and start out. But see, I was trying to figure out that and who might replace that, and I can't even remember what are the other numbers I had, but those stuck out.
Those seem to be the most important, I think.
But how about a 1,000-yard receiver this year? Is this year the chance? This year the year it finally happens?
It has to. I mean, think we have.
No, you get two 950s again.
You think so?
I think they are in each other's way of being a 1,000-yard receiver, and for the team that's fantastic because it's two equally viable options.
Yep.
But I think that they're in each other's way, and we're in a West Coast offense where there's not that many yards to go around.
Yeah, I just look at how bad the offensive line was last year, and how just the improvements all around. You think that they would be able to, one of them would be able to pick up just in one game enough yards to get over that hump. But then you have to think about what Treadwell's going to do in regards to taking snags away from the rest of the team. So you could be right.
Probably takes the Cordero Patterson share away. And then you've got a bunch of little guys fighting for the Jarius Wright and the old Treadwell snaps and the old Charles Johnson snaps and all that.
Yeah, Treadwell, between Treadwell and Kyle Rudolph, I think is the who's going to lead the team in receiving touchdowns.
I don't know if Thielen's going to do as well as he did. I think Thielen might not get. Might not even make it to 900. I mean, he might even more of a possession receiver. For some reason, he got behind players and scored long touchdowns. But
he had those 200-yard games, though. That's I think what inflated his stats.
Right, but that's going to get him more attention, and it's going to be tougher for him to repeat what he did this past year.
I actually disagree with that strongly. I think there's a lot of evidence that Thielen is the best deep receiver on the team and one of the better deep receivers in the league. I think we should continue to make him a deep target and not just like a third down possession receiver. He really has a great skill set for getting open on posted corner routes, and he's okay on the catch point. Really bad yards after the catch receiver, so I want him to do the running before the catching.
Believe me, I'm all for it. He's a Mankato guy, in what we said earlier. But we'll have to mark this down and see who comes up, because I think he's gonna attract more attention, and it's gonna be tougher for him.
Oh, that's true.
How does that work though?
As an overall production
good,
perspective, for sure.
How is he such a good? And I was gonna say that I've read that he's one of the better deep ball receivers in the league somewhere. But how is he good enough to get open and not good enough to pick up some yak afterwards? Is it just like...
It's a technique thing. So he ran a 4.5 which isn't that bad.
The ball weighs 50 pounds?
He runs backwards a lot. He just doesn't see holes. He doesn't see... I mean, we kind of saw it as a punt returner, too. He wasn't exactly like... He just doesn't have that kind of, like, open field ball carrier. Like, if think about what Dalvin Cook does and what we've seen him do in college in the open field, and then think of the exact opposite of that. And Thielen just doesn't, like... He doesn't see the holes, he doesn't see the angles, and he doesn't know how to, like, fall forward and fight, and he wants to run around, and he'll go backwards a lot. But when it comes to, like, planned, designed route running, which is what you do when you're a deep receiver, it's honestly, you could call it elite, and I wouldn't argue against you. His ability to create separation with his technique and the ability to, shade to the outside hip of the cornerback and then cut inside, and now you got the guy all turned around. Like, he's just amazing at that, and he can always create separation. He's, I think, 6'2", 6'3", he's tall enough to win contested catches. I want to throw to this guy deep. I don't need to, give him screens.
Yeah, so that basically what you're saying is that when he has a plan to follow, he's amazing, but he can't improvise, basically.
Yeah, it's harder for him to, see holes and see the field as it develops, rather than, he can execute routes very, very well. And the latter is way more important for a receiver like Thielen, so I'll take it.
Interesting. All right, well, with that, we're kind of up against it, so is there anything you guys wanted to plug before we disappear for another month?
I got edge rushers coming next week.
Ooh.
Got what?
Edge rushers.
Edge rusher. I don't know. I'll have one of my roster analysis is coming up, but I'm not sure what yet. Maybe I could just type up what we said about receivers and do that one. How's that?
Do it.
Do a transcript. I will plug that we might have some pretty cool announcements coming up, since this show is probably going to be one of our highest listened to ever, considering it's going to be posted around the same time as the Purple FTW interview, which we got like 10 subs on YouTube the day that I initially did his show. So stay tuned for that, because things are moving and shaking, and we're always trying to improve our site and bring more content, better content, that sort of thing. So thanks for listening. If this is your first listen, thanks especially if this is your second listen or 10th listen, and we will be back on a regular schedule now, so don't worry about us any more than you usually do. But with that is our show, so thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week. Skol!